Women have the power to transform this world. We can end crime and violence if we all agree to do one thing: share. Let's share our wisdom, share our time, share our talents, share our finances, but most of all, let's share our love. This is the Female Solution.
Is your life a little boring? Do days go by without a story? Do you long to know the glory of your days? Is there a march you haven't marched in? Is there a place you should have been in? Have you lost your step just trying to find your way? It's time to dream a dream. Live a dream. It's time to dream a dream. Dream a dream. If you're asleep, it's time to wake up. It's time for you to go and make up for all of the unfulfilled days of your life. Then go to a place and be bolder, fulfill the need and shout out louder. Do all of these things and don't you ever be afraid. It's time to dream a dream. Live a dream. Dream a dream. Dream a dream. Don't let life pass you by. Dream. There is no reason why. Good morning, you coffee breakers that made it up bright and early and are here to join me today with Coffee Break Live with Senabella. I'm your host, and I'm happy to be here with you. And for all of you who know me, I know that you are just a blessed individual because you blessed me multiple times just by being present. So how you doing today? It is Monday. Oh my God. Monday. No, it's not. It's Friday. See how confused I am already? I want it to be over. I don't really want this to be over, but I just got a little ahead of myself. Anyway, how you doing? How are you? It's been quite a period of time, hasn't it? It seems like from one Friday to the next, there's a multitude of things that go on and that really cause you to think outside the box. Like, what's going on? How am I going to get through this next day, this next moment? And what in the world is happening? I mean, we have so many things going on outside of our personal lives. And so we tend to want to either step back away from it or step into it. And I say that to begin my journey in discussing a little bit about my guest today, who's coming into the room, Susana Sandoval. This amazing woman is someone who I've had the pleasure of knowing for a few years. But you know how you know someone, but you don't know them, and then you find out about them, and then you go, oh my God, this is who I've been around all this time? Well, that's the way it has been for me with Susana. And I've had the pleasure of working side by side with her on small little things, but not really having the depth and the character of who she really is. Some people walk around and they're very quiet and modest in their appearance, and when they speak, this humble kind of presence. And so there's always that question, like, what's the rest of that person all about? Who is that? And how can I clarify my time with this person? Well, I have this time this morning, and I've had it over the last week. And I think that you're going to be super excited as I am to, one, meet her, acquaint yourself with who Susana Sandoval is, her mission in life, and who she is as a mother. And a person to the tribe in which she's from. I'm going to read a little bit about who she is before she comes on. But before I even do that, let me see if I got anybody talking to me this morning. I want to say some good mornings to people. Oh, right in the room as early and bright as morning. JJ, good morning, dear heart. How are you? Good to see you here. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. How's the sky above you? Isn't it something? I'm asking you how the sky is because JJ, she takes these beautiful captures of the sky and she posts them every day, and she puts this most beautiful music alongside it, and it tells a story. You know, we all have a gift, and sometimes we come into our gifts a little later in life. And I don't know how long you've been doing this, JJ, but thank you so much for being here. It's good to see you. And I just want to keep moving on because I don't want to waste a minute. I want to make sure that I put Susana on the up online so we can see her and talk to her. She's in, but she stepped away for a second. So let me read you a little bit of something about Miss Susana. Okay, let me share a little bit about Miss Susana with you so you can get to know her. And it says she's a mother, a daughter of the fifth son of the Lakota sun dancer, and she's a Lakota sun dancer and water pourer. We're going to ask all about that, right? Rituals. Susana continues building momentum on issues of sovereignty, food, water security. That's what they consider to be a basic human right, and it's defined as that. She's a community developer with a specialty focus on association chamber management, a nonprofit practitioner, social entrepreneur, investor who is also an NALAC, National Association of Latino Arts and Culture Fellow, who co-created the Juba Collective, a multidisciplinary arts performance ensemble. So I'm going to bring it to the on camera so you all can take a look at this beautiful sister and we can get started. So make sure you leave your comments. We're open to all and we're ready to get going. Good morning. How are you, Susana?
I'm blessed and highly favored. I hope you are too. It's good to see you.
You too. You've been on quite a journey this weekend, huh?
Yes, I have. Yes, we have.
Yeah, she's been all over the world. You know, this sister, she moves around so much. I remember when I first met her, she said, "Oh, I'm just coming back from the Black Caucus." I'm like, really? Thinking to myself, oh, she's been to the Black Caucus. And then next time I saw you, said, "What you doing?" "Oh, I'm just coming back." I'm like, oh my God, she travels all over the world and she does some amazing things. So are you feeling lifted? How's your energy?
I'm excellent. I'm doing really well. Just getting a chance to get some well-needed sleep, rest, to reboot, and I think that we're living during some pretty interesting times where we're going to need everybody, all hands on deck, and really looking forward to the things that you and I get a chance to create. What gets created after this moment that we're here together, the folks that are listening to this visit between you and myself, and the community that you've been able to create. And so it takes one to know one, right? It's a reflection.
Absolutely.
I'm just a reflection of the goddess in you.
Oh, my mother.
I really think that it's, I'm happy to be here today.
Well, that's really wonderful to hear you talk like that. You know, I'm always encountering you, but I guess I'm a chatty box. You know, I chat a lot, I talk a lot, and I'm always moving around, right? Busy, and that's just my energy. But it's a pleasure to have this moment in this hour to kind of unpack who you are, what you're doing with the audience, but for myself even to learn more about you through this visit, right? And you're right. I'm looking forward to the future projects and whatever it is that we'll work on together. You're a multidisciplinary artist. And so that's another thing that confused me. You were always doing all kinds of things. I'm like, is she on stage now? Where is she going now? So, you know, it's like this life that you have, you're still investing in that which you are. But I guess it's who you are is a part of the whole box. It's not just one thing in the box. And so do you endeavor your life with a seamlessness as you go from one stage to another? What does that look like for someone who's a mother and a multidisciplinary artist?
Well, we have a concept in, I'm Mexica, I'm Purepecha from the state of Michoacan. I was born and raised in Mexico City, but also born on the south side of the city of Chicago. and I've been crossing borders for many years. I was just sharing with folks at Serpent Mound that I'm a true Midwesterner, and my dad used to like to drive to Mexico, and
Mm,
so we used to pile in the station wagon and head down to Mexico City. And so, like many peoples, we migrate, right?
mhm.
And so, for the concept that I wanted to share is that we have circles. So instead of a box, I would like us to think in circles.
Oh, I like that.
And the circles, your innermost circle is you yourself. And then the secondary circle is your immediate family, your legacy, your offspring, and then from there it starts branching out. So I really see myself as a part of, stone, part of the stone people. A stone, when you sit and, when we still do it, I just did it just um, a day ago. You're sitting at the lake and you throw a rock in or a stone in and it ripples.
Hmm.
I would like to think of it as that. And so sometimes it can look differently for different people when you're observing it. But for me, I really was living that lifestyle way before I had a physical person tell me exact and explain to me what I was actually doing.
Mm, I like that. I think that your cultural background is one that we've always looked at from a perspective of people who are highly spiritual, peaceful people. Is that the truth? Is that how you see yourself and those that you've grown up with and around?
I think growing up between two different countries, both the US and Mexico, gave me a different perspective. I've had some defining moments throughout my lifetime, like most human beings. I think growing up in one of the most segregated cities that continues to be segregated, but we continuously work on the unity, right? I do believe that I come from a peaceful people. I believe that I come from and I hope that I'm able to serve my ancestors and my own legacy of bringing people together. I have learned that peace is a better tool than to be warlike. I think that I've learned through the seasoning of seasons to try to be the calm before the storm, even though I may be the storm.
I heard that. Say you are a woman, right?
Exactly. I'm definitely the storm, but I tend to come into spaces very differently. I think your defining moments really change when you're rooted in a spiritual foundation. And I'm grateful to Bertha and Trinidad Sandoval, who my father was a son of migrant farm workers, turned farmers who migrated up from the southern state of Michoacan and into California, where the Sandovals are still in California, and the majority of them are in the East Los Angeles suburban areas of LA. But they came through. My grandparents came through California, and they migrated across the United States, picking different crops with the seasons. And my dad was born in Summit Lake, Minnesota, and so when folks ask if I'm first generation or second generation, it's a little challenging because it depends on how you define America. It depends on how you define the United States. It depends on how you define generation. And we are, coming from a challenge of where, like my mother, she also migrated, her family migrated up from Mexico City and into Chicago, where during a time period in the 60s, where she went to school in the 60s, and you know different time periods of entering Chicago. My dad came to Chicago to work in the steel mills and the south side of the city of Chicago and the Midwest are learned for being hard workers. That's what we do. We work. and we gather and we unify. And I think some folks call us the heartland of America. And that's really who we are. And I would like to think that I'm doing justice to my parents, of just serving the community, continue to serve the community with all my gifts. I think that as the decades go on, and the days go on, that I'm learning who I am, and I'm being more rooted in using the gifts that I've been given, and being observant and being mindful of the words that I use, how I use them, how I show up.
Mhm.
Um, and I shared a message with folks this past weekend on being able, it's the gift of discernment. It's the gift
The
of
gift of
being,
discernment.
yeah, the gift of discernment, the gift of knowing what to do, when to do it, how to do it, when to speak, when to be silent, when to hold space.
Mm.
And I think that growing into my womanhood, you've been able to see me at different touch points in my
Right,
life, right?
right.
And so,
Both of us are all over the place, but you're a jet setter more so than I am.
I think, no, I truly meant when I said, that, it takes one to know one, right? And it's like, it's circles, the ripples,
Sure, 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 sure,
of, of the tsunami meeting the tsunami, the hurricane meeting the hurricane, but, really coexisting in same spaces and
sure.
seeding, like I come from farmers. I
Mm.
mean, I've been taught to work really hard, to have a strong work ethic and a constant commitment to community, and that looks different
Hmm.
at different times in different spaces. That could be me showing up and praying.
Right.
That could mean me being silent, being present. That could look like me singing a song. It could look like me um, helping set up lights, and making sure that the sound is great.
Well,
Or
being a servant, it sounds like that's what it is. We're always servants. You've shared with me multiple pictures and assets that we're going to share with the audience, and I find it to be most interesting. A lot of times, you hear African Americans say, "Oh, my family was Indian," or I come from Indians," but we really don't know, right? And so everything is a journey in life, and that's something that we come to realize. But then there's also this disconnect to the truth, which is the truth is that if I'm suffering and I'm African American, right? And I call some today they use the terminology foundational Black Americans, right?
mm,
Well, what about the conversation about foundational indigenous people, right? That conversation doesn't come up often, and it only comes up here and there. How has that affected the family of naturalized people, and how big is that community today? What does that community size look like?
it's interesting that you used the word naturalized. I had a call with an elder from Bolivia yesterday, and in his prayer, as we closed our conversation, he said, "Remember that we're leaders of the natural law."
Mm.
you know and my elder, Chief Wesley Black Elk, likes to say that English is a tricky language. English is not my first language. English is not your first language, but it is a language that we have learned to use to express ourselves, and we're finding the intersections between our quote unquote native language, right? What our ancestors spoke. And then we're also creating our own language, right? And so people have talked about love languages, people have talked about all kinds of things. But when you talk about naturalized, and what that means, um, I have spent a majority of my time in scholarship and what quote unquote Western scholarship has been called. I worked in the 90s at the National Museum of Mexican Art. And one of the things that I wanted to work on, because I grew up in one of the most segregated cities in North America, Chicago. Uh,
Okay.
and I grew up on the South Side, and I grew up not seeing myself different from the African American community or the African community, and such. And I felt, that there was a calling to me, right, of that that culture, of our culture.
Mm-hmm.
And as I did a deep dive into, Catholicism, which I grew up Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
and I grew up understanding the history of the conquistadors and how they came to Mexico and how they took over an indigenous people. And then spending time during the 90s working um, at bringing that facet of our culture, of the Mexican culture, of our African culture. We spent about close to 3.5 years of negotiating with the Mexican government to take out artifacts that would show the African presence in Mexico. And I think it's important to say that our cultures are all learning who we are, because there is the history of what we've been taught in books. And then there's a herstory, which we still have yet, that is unfolding currently in the time period of the divine feminine, where we're hearing women that were present during these historical time periods, and they're telling their stories, or that folks like us, are bringing that light, into being. And so I think that it's important to really think about if there was really differences. I've always been one to concentrate on that intercultural, that multicultural, that multiverse that we all are, and understanding the migration of our peoples, and how, um, rather than letting somebody else define us,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
defining ourselves and looking at those commonalities and those similarities. So the exhibit was called The African Presence in Mexico, and there is still a traveling exhibit, the National Museum of Mexican Art in Chicago, which is the largest Mexican museum in the United States. Um,
Susana, I'm wondering, how do you go about, and how, well, first of all, the name of your tribe is, what is the name of your tribe?
Purepecha. So
And,
Purepecha is one of the tribes that I'm from. It's the tribe that I most identify with
mhm.
during this trajectory of my life. And it's
Purepecha.
Purepecha. And their language they speak is Purepecha as well. And it's in the south. It's just south of Mexico City,
And what
southeast.
does Purepecha, Purepecha mean? What does
I
it
mean,
mean?
Purepecha it means like the people. Like
Mhm.
it means, and when people look at it, it can mean pure, it can mean pecha. It means, just that you're rooted. It's the purity of being rooted, and such. But I'm a Shika. I mean, and that's the thing, the fallacy of Mexico, right? People think that, there's just the Aztecs or there's just the Mayans. But
Mhm.
in one state alone, like if you look at the state of Oaxaca, there's 216 dialects.
So
You know,
there are as many people and there are as many tribes and dialects as when we discuss talking about coming from Africa and
correct.
all the different countries and all the different languages and so forth. So it's not as small as we may see it, because it's not really at the forefront of our conversations. There's a lot of education that we all need. And I think that today, because there's so much struggle, that people are now beginning to become more sensitive to who's in the room or who doesn't have a voice, right? And
Correct.
so one of the jobs that it's one of the things that are part of your mission that I've taken note to is that you go around and you speak and you educate and you share and grow in a lot of different communities, and you've worked very hard also within the African American community and what we need. And earlier you said that you grew up in Chicago and you didn't see yourself that different, or you were immersed in the African American community as well, right? And so you have children and they're with an African American man, correct?
Correct. I have children with someone who is I would say, a cultural expert, cultural worker, someone who is an elder
Mhm.
in the African American community in Chicago, in a global sense.
Mhm.
And we birthed two amazing human beings,
No doubt.
amazing,
No doubt. Your children are excellent.
who are, Charisma and Kasan are excellent musicians. they're human beings in the global sense. They're the citizenry of the work that they do. I've been humbled to be their mother. I tell them that all the time with tears in my eyes of like, I'm just grateful that I was able,
Right.
that they've taught me,
Hmm.
that they've taught me so much that, that they have, come into the world fiercely,
Hmm.
um, and gently.
Hmm. Are they as involved in the work that you do, or are they? What do they lean into more? What do in terms of their heritage? Are they do they lean more into both, and or are they more involved in one or the other?
Charisma's a part of the urban farming movement in Chicago. She's an urban farmer who has, in Chicago, we have a lot of city lots that have been turned into food oases because as a lot of the city have been food deserts, were high priced, poor quality fruits and vegetables, and she's part of that movement. I'm very proud of that's on both sides of the family. Both sides of the family have farming, um, roots. And we're farmers, we're gardeners. We tend to the soil, we see things, and she's very much also a jewelry designer. Kasan is a sound engineer, a musician, a great um, orator that we still have yet to hear, as he's evolving, as is Charisma. I mean, Charisma just finished a 2-year Public Allies Fellowship, um, where, in her closing remarks, like for the fellowship just blew, everyone away. I really was like, wow, she's very much the
Well, I had
historian.
a chance to meet both of them and work with them in the same instance, and I was just blown away. And I remember seeing you, I think either later that day or later that week, and I was just like bubbling over.
Mhm.
Uh, it's really something when we get a chance to meet the lineage of our friends' children. Uh, when we meet them and we see how those connections are, and you see the spirit of that person within their children, right? But there was even something greater for me because they truly are themselves, but at the same time I could sense their mom and their dad in them, and that's really wonderful. I think that we're talking roots here today. We're talking about the root of who we are. I want to take this all the way back to the beginning about prayer. My mother was a prayer warrior, and this morning the first thing you said to me, give me a minute, I'm still in prayer. And I thought to myself for a moment, it just gave me such calm and such resolve because I remember my mother sitting in the chair early mornings, head down, praying. And so that is not just a ritual, it's something that is, for me, when I think of prayer, I think about resetting.
Mm.
I think about resetting. I think about being in one with myself in this universe and aware. Prayer has allowed me to become more aware of people, things around me, to put my energy into a place where there is a caring for that, right? So it has a very substantial essence and function in my life. In your in what was sent to me, the way that it speaks of you and the prayer, you're I wanted to pull it up and see if I could read it so I could say what I am about to make it right. But I think I might have to go to commercial and come back and say it because there's a line here. But let's just to talk about prayer a little bit before we go and take a break, and then I'll come back and ask that question a little better. How about that?
Okay. So I think what you're asking is to talk in general about prayer. And so, I grew up Catholic. I grew up Catholic on the south side of the city of Chicago.
Yeah.
I grew up being groomed to be a nun. Which is an interesting thought because I still do very much feel that like I'm walking with my vocation, that I'm walking in the work that I need to be doing. But that looks differently at different times. Prayer, there's an African proverb that says you need to pray with your feet. I definitely believe that I've taken that on. I've been a walker, a faster, a prayer, and in the truest of sense, I am one of the women who fasted in front of the White House when the Obama administration was in administration of the United States, to ask for some reform to immigration. There were 10 women that decided to do that. And they asked, well, what are you going to do? You're going to protest. And what are you going to do? And like, no, we're going to pray. That's all we're going to do. We're going to sit in front of the White House and we're going to pray. And people would come to visit us, etc. I've also been a faster on Fast for Families, which was a northern bus route of one of the fasts in regards to immigration reform. But it's part of who I grew up to be. Some of the, like you were saying, the practices, the rituals that we're raised with. But I have learned, as many of us do, to select what I can gravitate towards, which roots me in a particular way. And I continue to do that. I continue to do that. And it looks differently on some days. Some days it looks like I break out into song, or I play the piano, or I'm drumming on a drum. And some days it looks like all of that in a row, or it looks like today I'm going to sit and I'm going to call, and schedule a few meetings, with folks, or I'm going to host, a gathering and ask folks to show up. That looks very different. And I think that that's in the times that we're living in, when there's bombings, over, children and families, and so many world events happening and so many local events happening, right? Because it's again the rippling effects, right?
Mhm.
And being conscious to how do we one, instead of you trying to control the world, let's control ourselves first, because we are a world within a world within a world within a world. As I explained the concept of the circles, right? Like we're a multiverse ourselves. So the effect that we have and the sound vibration is making sure that our calmness is there. And a lot of times too, people can misinterpret you being here, being there, being spread too thin, but they don't know what our capacity is, right?
Mhm.
Because I've
Right.
had a lot of people ask me, well, how is it that you're doing what you're doing? And then I'm like, well, I'm not the only one that's doing it. I have helpers. I have ancestors that are helping me. I have
Absolutely.
sometimes, the what do they say? The journey begins when you just step out there, and then it unfolds, and then you're like, I'm deciding to do this, and now, I'm working to do that. I know when I decided that I was going to run for public office, it wasn't going to be an immediate thing. It was an 8-year planning process,
Hmm.
and I had to weave what that path looked like. I had to ensure that people were going to be included in a particular way. And it was not focused. Yes, of course, I would love to serve in the US Senate. Uh, but I also think that it was, it's a means to an end, and it's a means that a gift, a message that was given to me by my ancestors of leading in a particular way. Yes, servant leadership, but in particular, women, we lead very differently than men do.
We
And
do. We,
we are gatherers. We unify folks. We build community. We build the communication. We build the unity. Now, balancing what quote unquote has been learned behavior as masculinity and learned behavior as femininity. A human being, we have to we reconcile that with ourselves.
Mhm.
We work through our defining moments. We work through our mothers, our grandmothers, our great grandmothers. But those of us who've been blessed to be seated by both masculine and feminine, and spend the time reflecting on that. There were times where I didn't do a lot of talking. I mean, I grew up being very quiet. I grew up being working on my gifts of observation, learning to pray, learning when to be, meek and humble, learning when not to be meek and humble, and being
Like you say,
aware.
right? Like you say, just let that what's inside of you speak and to act upon it.
And
There's there's something I want to step back into
yes,
again. You I know that we have a lot to discuss, and I'm going to have you back because I know that there's more that I'd like for you to educate and share with us about who you are from this very specific place of being who you are as an indigenous woman. I think we need to become more aware of what's happening with the indigenous people, right, of America and the language, right? There's this here fight about naturalization and who owns what, and the right now that's like the biggest conversation on the ground. And how's that going to affect not only us but the people who are naturally from here? There's always the argument now, like, yeah, well, you talking about you own the land and stuff, but you look who you took out to own the land. That conversation is not really talked about that often. I don't know how important it is to talk about it from the definition of the scarcity of the conversation and the historical aspects of the conversation. But I think that it's an unspoken thing. It's not unspoken. It's not talked about enough. I think as African Americans, we need to become more aware before we utilize this these little anecdotes. I think it's good to say it because we raise the spirit of it, right? But at the same time, we just don't have enough conversation about it. It's one of the things that I really admire about who you are is that you step into who you are, and you're stepping into who you are from all the different aspects. And that's got to be like a juggling act as well. Like, how do you go around? Because people view you in many different ways, I'm sure. So I'm going to take a break and come back. But before I even do that, I want to acknowledge a few comments. Naima Latif, the executive producer and founder of Female Solutions, says, thank you for your consistent global activism over the years. We appreciate you. And then,
sir.
you probably know her. And then
Yes,
Zelda
of course.
Robinson, yeah, Zelda Robinson says, ancestors are always watching and waiting for us to embrace them. And then Vieta Robinson is here. And just good morning and blessings to everybody. I'm so glad to see you here. She says, Grand Rising, happy to hear your focus on changing self to change the world. Blessing and peace to you. Thank us, United Souls. I like that, United Souls. So we're blessed to have this opportunity, everybody, to speak with Susana. And I don't want to, I thought I was going to run right to the commercial, but I want to talk about the fact that we just lost Jesse Jackson, who he was to you, and how he has worked to help perform in his own unique way with you and what it is that you do when we come back. How about that?
That's great. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, very good. So we'll be right back. Let's go see what's happening with who we are as people around the world. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Masterforce with Mushim Suit. Join us each week on Thursdays at 7 a.m. Central, live on Facebook and YouTube on the Female Solution page, as we dive into powerful topics designed to assist you in mastering your life force. Our conversations feature a diverse lineup of experts, all dedicated to your growth. Tune in weekly to discover new ways to elevate your spirit and raise your vibration. And remember, we are ascending.
And we're back. Now, I want to
Mhm.
get right back into it because in 2016, you invited Reverend Jesse Jackson to the front lines of the Standing Rock Prayer Camp against the Dakota Access Pipeline and served as an assistant to the tribal consultant elder as well as the tribal nation. So let's get into it because what was that temperament like, and how did Reverend Jackson see himself in that equation? What did he speak about? What was the connectivity?
So, firstly, that was at the tail end of my run for U.S. Senate in Illinois. And I got a call from California from my elders, and they asked if I would be of assistance. And I said, of course, if I'm able to do that, of course, and just let me know what's needed. And they said that the tribal nation wanted Reverend Jackson to come and visit camp. Why? Because we had been um, getting tear gassed. There was a lot of black ops that were in North Dakota, um, like mercenaries that had been hired in order to watch and interface with the Standing Rock Prayer Camp, and that's located in Cannibal, North Dakota. And so I said, sure, I'll go pay a visit. I'll visit with Reverend Jackson and see what that possibility looks like. And so I immediately went to his office and came in to Operation Push, as I've done many times before, and went into the office and handed him the phone. And he was asking me, well, obviously he was aware of it. He was very much a global citizen. He and I had something in common. We like to read the news. I mean, I grew up, my uncle founded three media outlets and the National Association of Hispanic Publications. So we do follow the news quite a bit, and not just in the US, but globally to see what's happening. And that is a habit that he and I both had, to rise early and to see what's happening around the world, um, and and ask ourselves, like, where can I be of most use today, right? So when I showed up in his office, he wasn't surprised at all. He asked me, what was needed. And I said, well, rather than me tell you, let's put you on the phone with the tribal chairman. Let's call him right now and have the two of you speak. And so they did. And the tribal chairman said, we'll speak to Susanna and, figure that part out and let us know what's needed on our end. And so he hung up the phone and he looked at me and he said, so what do you think is needed? And I said, well, this is what I think we should do. And, a visit would be great, X, Y, and Z. And then he said, well, let's go tomorrow. You ready to go tomorrow? And I said, sure, let's go tomorrow. Met him at the airport, um, at the Gary airport, and then got on a plane and went to Standing Rock. Um, Overnight, the behind the scenes part kicked in, where we also went with Nick Tilson, who runs NDN Foundation. He's one of the brothers from one of the other tribal nations, who is also an Ashoka Fellow and an amazing community organizer himself as well. And um, we prepped the talking points, because you just don't go to a 10,000 person camp.
Hmm.
Show
Is
up.
that how many people are in the camp?
Yeah, at the highest point there were 10. There were more at some other times because we had a gathering of veterans and there were way more at that
Wow,
time. And so
veteran.
it was a global call to action. Many people came. It was a year-long effort in order to answer the call to action for protection of our water, for protection of lands, for protection of people who are aware
Mhm.
of our natural resources that are concerned. Some people call it climate change. Some of us are just natural tenders, keepers of the land. And in essence, no one owns the land. We're all migrating. And so I think it's important to remind ourselves that, while we're charging people for clean water,
Hmm.
every time I go to the store and buy water, it seems, it seems odd to have to pay for something that our ancestors, your ancestors, wanted us to have. Why are we, and why is it polluted? Those are questions that a lot of people at camp were asking themselves, like, what that call, to action. And so it was apparent to me when we landed. And I had heard of racism. I had felt racism over the years myself. But when Reverend Jackson came off that plane, definitely saw what racism looked like. I
Oh my.
mean, from the time that he stepped down into the airport, it was apparent that, yes, we were aware that KKK is literally all over the United States still. And even are some of our leaders.
Embedded in our culture, in our land, in our
Exactly.
everyday comings and goings, right? It
And
exists.
so that time period of stepping down, that touch point of seeing that history, of realizing that, in 2016, we're still dealing with the same things that we were dealing with decades ago. And Reverend Jackson said to me, he turned and he said, it's still happening. You need to see this. Not that you're not aware of it, but I'm glad that you're seeing it with, in this way. Spending time there, press conference. He got on a horse. His handlers weren't handling him. I was telling him, Rev, you need to get down off that horse, right? I mean, he's a people person,
Yes,
you
he
know,
was.
walking around, and it's something that I was able to tell, his family members, his children. It's like, I did the best that I could do to handle your dad, but you know what that's like. trying to handle Reverend Jackson is
People do what they want to do.
right, exactly,
He's still a person, right? That's the thing. We're still people, even though people see us as precious and coveted in a certain kind of way.
exactly. And the one thing that happened as we were going to go for the day, correct? And we were going to go for the day, and when it was time for us to wrap things up and to head out of camp, um it was going to be challenging to leave because, I mean, who doesn't want Reverend Jackson to stick around for a bit, right? Or to live in that moment, and to sing songs, and to do the things that we were doing, and have the exchanges at camp. But he knew that we were going to just come for the day. And as we were leaving, the state police showed up and insisted that Reverend Jackson come to see the governor. And he was like, well, if the governor wants to come and see me, he can come here. He can come here with our people, and we can sit and we can talk. But there's no way that I'm going to go and get in a car with you all or
Mhm.
follow you all to go to the Capitol and meet the governor. Like, the governor needs to respect the nation state that the tribal nation is. And that's the fallacy of and my critique even of President Obama was that he sent a letter. He never came in person. He was adopted by the Cree Nation, adopted into the family of the Cree Nation,
Wow.
um, for support of his run for the presidency, and never showed up.
Wow. That
The
says a
pres-
lot.
yeah,
It speaks.
president.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just have to interject. That speaks volumes because I was thinking as you were speaking of Reverend Jackson, God bless his soul. May he have peace and great value in the life that he's now entered into and continue to guide us. That was the difference, though. Is one thing about being charismatic and performative in the seat in the places that you go. It's another thing about showing up. And showing up is something Reverend Jackson seems to have as a legacy. Everyone who speaks of him showing up. And in my few short encounters with him, the showing up was always obvious, right? And just being around wherever it was that he was. And that spirit is what helps us to come to kind of look at who we are, to define who we are and what we should be as servant leaders. And so he used his enormous personality his amazing charisma to sort of broadcast his messaging by his actions and showing up, not just speaking, right? And so that access to him in that way is very performative for people who are there looking at it. What was it like for the tribe in the day that he was there, and what he said in terms of saying the governor can come here? What was that like for you and the tribe to have heard him say that?
It was profound. I mean, I know. I mean, I get. I know most people don't understand how the government works. Most people don't understand the Constitution. We talk about amendments, and we in grammar school we all have to take a Constitution test. And in the '90s, there was an attempt to have American Studies programs instituted. As far as like collegiate scholarship, etc. But I think our country does, or the U.S. I should say, the U.S. of America, United States of America, does. We could stand to redefine our American identity, and that's currently what we're living through right now.
Mm-hmm.
Is like making America great again. Again, who's going to do that? How? What does that look like when
Mm-hmm.
we're celebrating the history of a country that's so young compared to so many other cultures, to so many other nations? Like, how are we going to be utilizing our power, quote unquote power, our platform, our world stage? And I think you pointed to something too. I do want to share something that was profound for me, that Reverend Jackson used to tell me a lot of things. Reverend Jackson used to tell folks a lot. He would pick up the telephone and randomly call people,
Mm-hmm.
or randomly have conversations or ask you to do something. I mean, people talked a lot about that during the funeral, right?
Right, right.
And we'll continue to talk about the multiple conversations. But to me,
Just
when I
on that, I want to say, and I know I'm going to say it because that was part of the dynamics of the early coming together when the whole civil rights movement started. Everybody was performative. Everybody was showing up, and everybody showed up in the ways that you're speaking of, Reverend Jackson. The phone was an essential part of connecting and making sure everybody understood everything. And so our parents and our grandparents, they called people, told them what to do, how to do it. They checked on everybody. That's something that's very essential that we need to get back to: checking in, communicating, caring about, and building a coalition that puts us under one umbrella. Please, I just needed to say that.
No, and I think Chicago has a tradition of it. We've had in the past, we had neighborhood clubs, right? Black clubs, and people would check on people. I think we're getting back to that. There's a movement back towards that. But I think that women, we do that naturally. Like, I
Mhm.
know my mom sits and she dials all her friends, and she has a printed address book that she still uses, and she calls folks up. I mean, now it's a little easier with cell phones and that such, but the landline,
Mhm.
the landline, you know what I'm saying? The landline of like,
Is that a landline or a cell phone, right? Yeah.
right. But
Mhm.
it's a landline, right? Like where you pick up the telephone and you call so and so and that kind of thing. But I mean, that you're correct in that saying. But the message that Rev said to me that day was profound. He said to me, as we were, there were three of us in the vehicle. There were more of us in the vehicle, but the two that got out, Reverend Jackson got out and Nick Tilson got out. I'm a community organizer. I'm a direct action organizer. If those of us who know, we lock down on equipment, we sit in, we do a lot of things, right?
Including going to jail.
Including, yes, including getting arrested for some really great reasons, getting into good trouble, like
Right.
people are
Real
just,
civil rights. Right.
right, exactly. In all of what civil, nonviolent civil disobedience looks like, right? And I try to get out of the car, I'm getting out of the car, and we're all getting out of the car, like the three of us are getting out of the car, and he turns to me and he says, "Not you, Sandoval." He says, "You represent our future."
Mm.
He goes, "This may be my last rodeo,
Mm.
but you need to stay in the car because you're going to be the keeper of our future." Now, part of me, the feminist, and I don't consider myself a feminist, but the raging feminist in me is like, wait a second. Like, is it that I'm a woman and that you don't want me to get out of the car? I need to get out of the car. Like my grandmother's just telling me to get out of the car. But I listened to what he said, which was a message that some of the elders have told me as well. It's like, not sit still, but witness, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
I witnessed that
Right.
scenario. There's some footage out there somewhere on the local channel station of him actually telling them, if the governor wants to come here, tell him to come here, and that was what that exchange was about. And then he got back in the car and we laughed about it. And then we started unpacking, on the plane back to Chicago. And he started telling me, sharing parts of his history, right?
Mhm.
When I went to Memphis, and stood at the Lorraine Motel, I heard things.
The Lorraine Motel.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
The
Okay.
Lorraine Motel went and
Same
tried
part.
to piecemeal together what Rev had shared of part of his trajectory, of his life experience, and stood there still to try to remember what he told me,
Mhm.
look at the balcony, talk to the elder. There's an elder woman that's there. I think she goes there every day. That's her commitment, is to be there every day. And she said, until I pass, I'll be here every day, and I'll share what people want to hear. If the people want to listen to me, they listen. But like to stand there and to witness, and to put pieces of the puzzle and let it fill in, right? And be mindful of, that's it. So when I stood at Lorraine Motel, it seemed familiar. It
Mm.
seemed familiar, when in different time periods of my life, when I've been in Brooklyn, New York, and there's a crypt of ancestors of African slaves that has not been recognized. And I know that. And I walk over to the person and I said, do you know what's here? And they're like, well, we're not exactly sure what's here. Well, we need to figure out what's here,
Right.
right? Like those are touch points,
Mhm.
and being mindful of, as the sister commented, the ancestors are always speaking to us, but are we necessarily listening,
Mhm.
or is the creator speaking to us? Is it time for you to speak? Is it time for you to be silent? Is it time for you to witness? When and how long are we going to be silent? Like, it
Mhm.
drives me crazy to see, um and it reminds me, you know of what I'm supposed to do when I see all the ice raids. I know what I'm doing.
Oh, wow.
I know that people are concentrating on the differences, not the similarities.
Mm.
Like the piece of paper that is our
So, like,
Constitution.
concentrating on the differences and not the similarities. That's a
Right.
very profound
I mean,
statement.
we're redefining what it means to be American right now. When I have traveled, last year I traveled to various countries in Latin America to find out why people want to come here. Why do people want to come to the United States of America?
Right.
Like, I've asked people, I've met with communities, I've asked individual people to share stories, but to go to those communities and see how people live, and see similarities and differences, and see the access, and see just how privileged we are as
Mhm.
US based Americans, and how much food gets wasted here in the
Right.
US. How many
You know,
people still go hungry?
we're running out of time, but you said something that really just set right inside of me, and I need to say it again. We do need to ask ourselves, and we need to really define, what does it mean to be an American? That was very profound when you said that. It set a tone for everything that we're about to get into as we come into this here reality of everything being torn apart, only to get to that one question: what does it mean to be American? What are we really trying to do to save ourselves as American people? Because after it's all said and done, we're under this one notion of being American, right? We get our driver's license, our passports. We walk around and we fight about things such as color, gender, uh, who's wealthier and who's not, right? But what does it really mean to be an American? I think that we're gonna wrap it up here, and I want to leave that with you to discuss for the next minute or so. What is your how do you define what does it mean to be an American? And I want to say I'd like to have you back. If we can get you back next Friday, I'll clear the books and we'll do it, and we can pick up from there. But what does it mean to be an American? I think everybody needs to put that in their head and try to understand what does it mean to American and what to be American and what are our benefits of that? Why are we fighting for that?
No, and I always make a distinction. What does it mean to be a US based American? Like I use that language a lot because America to some folks is North America and South America. It's a much larger than just the US, and so we have to spend time understanding that. Like from my spiritual practice, I believe in the prophecy of the eagle and the condor are going to be reunited. Doing that work. I do that work with the ceremonies that I do with spiritual elders, the convenings that we do, not in the United Nations. I mean, the United Nations is one format of people gathering in the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. I mean, I'm in my 9th year as a Human Rights Commissioner for that. But the more important conversations happen in our communities. And I think we really need to understand what we the people mean, right?
Mm-hmm.
What does we the people of the United States of America, like wait, at some point I had that memorized, right? Like it was a homework assignment where you had to memorize it and you had to understand it.
Right.
Again, we all took Constitution tests, but American, what does it mean to be a human being? What does it mean to be conscious, self-aware, but also giving? What does it mean to be such a quote unquote first world power and be in control of so many things, but yet not want to give?
Mm.
We have an administration that has pulled back from participating in many gatherings for particular reasons. But did they ever bother to ask the people, we the people, what we wanted? I mean, yes, this is an instance of leadership that we're moving through. It could be a needed instance, a necessary introspection, magnifying of thoughts that, a balance that's needed, the great balance that's needed, the balance that's needed in each and every one of us to say, hey, is housing not a basic human right? Food, shelter, and clothing.
We're gonna stop there because we're out of time. Susana, thank you so much. Such a profound way to end, and I'm looking forward to us coming right back in at that point.
I just want to leave one thought though.
Sure, go ahead.
In the great balance, we need women to speak.
Mm.
We have been silenced for so long, and we can witness. And there are many people like Fannie Lou Hamer or Rosa Parks or Maya Angelou or Dolores Huerta or I mean the list goes on and on, right? From different communities of women that have utilized their voice to speak for others. But I want to take this time to make a call to action to ask the folks that are watching this, that are witnessing this, that are gathering here. What is your role? What is our role? What can we do together? What can women do together? How can women be supported so that we can lead differently? We have always been leading.
Susana, that is an excellent way to end. Let's ask that question. What can we do? What can we do as women? But in a performative way, what can we do? Thank you, Susana, so much. I look forward to just
so
right. You sure? Everybody's like still tuned in. I'm going to go ahead and close the show out, everyone. And we're going to look for Susana to see if she can get back in with us this next Friday. Thank you so much. I'm Senabella. And this is the Coffee Break Live with Susana Sandoval. Thank you so much.
We are global transformers, changing the world from the way it is to the way it should be. We are one. Wherever we live on this earth, we are one human family. On behalf of our team of radio hosts, I'd like to extend a greeting to all the members of our family, whenever and wherever you may be listening around the world. To our family in China, Ni Hao. In India, Namaste. In Japan, Konnichiwa. In Korea, Annyeonghaseyo. In Russia, Здравствуйте. In Germany, Guten Tag. In Poland, Dzień dobry. In France, Bonjour. In Spain, Hola. In Italy, Ciao. In Egypt, Ahlan wa sahlan. In Ghana, Akwaba. In Nigeria, Peleo. In South Africa, Sawubona. In Senegal, Nangadef. In Kenya, Jambo. In Israel, Shalom. In Pakistan, Afghanistan, Palestine, and Saudi Arabia, Assalamu alaikum. Greetings.